It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited, as always, to come to you today with another good episode that we have here in Northwest Arkansas. You know, we focus on all things related to business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks. And today, we're talking about building for a brighter future, and that begins at home. And joining us today is David Stitt of the Stitt Group. And for over 40 years, the Stitt Group has been a leader in sustainable and energy-efficient home design right here in Northwest Arkansas. And the cool thing was, the other day after I had originally spoken to David about doing this podcast, I was just driving in my neighborhood, and what pops up in the neighbor's yard is a Stitt Group yard sign. And I almost wanted to stop and talk to my neighbor and find out the work that had been done. But that I saw that sign, I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to have a chance to sit down and talk with David very soon, and I can't wait to do that. So without further ado, David Stitt, welcome to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to just have a good conversation today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So listen, there's so much I'd love to talk about. And actually, as I shared with you earlier when we had our preliminary phone call, is that just the whole idea of energy efficiency has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart since I've worked with engineers and architects since about 1997 in a former life. And so I've always had a chance to have a conversation about energy efficiency. And then there's this whole concept of net zero homes and what that looks like, right? And I mean, I think any one of us listening to this podcast could only imagine a world where you didn't have a utility bill. Just that in and of itself is like, wow, what would that look like, right? And so that is actually a world that you're kind of familiar with and have an idea or an understanding of how you get from point A to point B as far as that's concerned, especially with residential housing. But I would love for you just to kind of give us a little glimpse into who the Stitt Group is for our audience and talk a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah. I remember, it's probably been a decade or more when we actually had a conversation around our office and said, what if someday we could build homes that had no utility bill or actually even produce their own energy? And that seemed like a lofty goal. And we'd always, since day one, by best building practices and building and attention to detail and doing things that were in harmony with the sunrise and the sunset, we always had utility bills on our homes that were a fraction of the other homes being built. But the advent of solar and batteries and just building a better mousetrap makes it very common to our customers today. And most of them do enjoy, a zero utility bill, or at least they pay the minimum allowed by the minimum that the utility charges to be connected. But, the whole company was born out of a curiosity and a fascination with the sun and how much energy that comes from the sun, how much hits the face of the earth every day. And yet we all try to figure out how to produce more energy, whether that's hydrocarbons or wind or other resources. But the sun is an incredible source of energy, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to economically harvest it. We've been tasked with making the connection of solar and housing affordable and economical since day one. And so here we are today.
And day one was 46 years ago, right? And that was when your dad, Orlo, and your mom, Mary, started the company.
Correct.
Yeah. And they're still working in the company.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're second generation.
And interestingly, the principles and the basics, the foundation of what the company was started on still exists today.
Okay. That's awesome. So talk about, I know that recently we had a challenge here in Northwest Arkansas, and what I mean by that for the listeners that are not from this area, maybe thinking about moving to Northwest Arkansas, we had a major tornado come through in May, and that really impacted everybody, but it especially impacted you. You guys are based in Rogers, Arkansas, which is a bedroom community, is a part of the greater area of Northwest Arkansas, as I like to say, Bentonville's the top or Bella Vista, not to shortchange them, and then Fayetteville's at the bottom, and there's everything in between. And part of that in between is Rogers. And Rogers is growing by leaps and bounds, but I had a major challenge with this tornado. And I was just curious to know how the impact of the tornado for you specifically, but just in general, has led you to deal with how the Stitt Group approaches energy efficiency and, just by looking at what you've had to deal with over the past few months since that tornado.
Yeah, our office, we had 2 office buildings. We have 2 office buildings, and one had a tree fall on it, and our property, which was surrounded by large trees, because that's one of our principles is to take care of the earth. And so we've kept these big, beautiful trees around our office because they provide shade and habitat and whatnot. But when that tornado hit, they came down on one of our buildings, and we have rebuilt it, and we're rebuilding with the same principles in mind, that we are going to make it as efficient, if not more efficient. We're going to expand some of the technology that was in that building originally. But interestingly, once the basics of orientation and construction, the basic principles of passive solar design and construction are implemented, they're always there. They're passive in nature, and so they just work, 46 years ago, or they work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so we're rebuilding. We're almost done. We're anxious to get back into our new remodeled office.
No, that's exciting. How long before that happens?
I'm going to say 30 days from today is our goal, and I think we will hit it.
Okay, good. So that'll be awesome. So talk to me a little bit about part of the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is to kind of overcome some of the myths and questions that a lot of people have about net zero and all that. Can you explain kind of in a nutshell what it means to live in a net zero home and why it should be the future goal for building projects?
It's a great question. And it's a big, broad answer, but I'll simply put it this way. Number one, today, the majority of people that consume energy are 98+% or more dependent on the electric grid. Efficiency should always be considered first. It's the low-hanging fruit of any project. We have a funny saying around our office that if you build a car with square wheels, it doesn't get very good mileage.
Right.
If you build a car with round wheels, or even like a train, steel wheels that roll on a rail, it's incredibly efficient. And so we often talk that most new homes built today are built with square wheels.
Yeah.
By their very nature, by the way they're constructed, their building practices, they use too much energy to begin with, and the low-hanging fruit of energy is energy efficiency. And once you do energy efficiency, a solar array or a battery becomes very achievable. And the benefit to the customers, they're not 100% dependent on the rate changes for utilities. We have a grid in America that is aging. It needs updates. It needs lots of improvements. And it's going to come at a very, very large cost, which will be passed along to ratepayers. So the investment in energy efficiency and solar and batteries reduces a long-term risk going forward to lower energy costs, greater resiliency when the grid goes down. You're less susceptible to those problems.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I know there's a lot that goes into creating and designing a net zero home, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But obviously on the foundation of having a net zero home, one of the biggest things is just getting a better understanding of how solar energy is truly affordable in the long run, right? It's this idea that sometimes I think solar energy sometimes gets a bad rap because it's just the unknown. People don't fully understand it. They think, oh, I'm going to have to layer my whole roof with a solar array. And I hope I'm saying it right. But the idea here is that I'm going to have to do something that I'm not used to doing in order to harness the sun. But I would love for you maybe just to talk a little bit about the real affordability of solar energy.
Yeah. The first thing I would say, you're going to hear a lot of our little catchphrases and nuances that we say around our office, but if solar was like a marathon, the gun just went off. We're not. It's an industry that's been around for a long time, but it hasn't touched the homeowner or the business owner or the superintendent maybe as closely. So there's a lot of learning that needs to happen, and that's one of our hallmarks. Is we believe that we have to educate the customer and make sure they understand what it can do, its limitations, what it can do and can't do, what does it cost, and realistically what what does the investment look like? And we talk a lot about the environmental benefits. We talk about the financial benefits. We talk about incentives or tax credits. And the basis for all that is when customers have good information, they make good decisions.
Yeah.
And very openly, one of the challenges the solar industry has had is with we joke, we all call it the solar coaster because it's up and down. But as it's going up, people jump into it, and there's a lot of sales tactics that aren't always honorable. And so people can be pressured into, and this isn't just the solar industry, it's a lot of industries, but they can be pressured into, financing that's not, maybe not the best financing or high pressure sales tactics. That can make solar less economical because finance fees and maybe a system that's not the right system for the house. So it is a great product. It is affordable. It will do a lot of heavy lifting for someone's utility bill, but it has to be designed correctly. It has to be priced correctly. And you have to set realistic expectations for the home, the business, or wherever it's going to be used.
Yeah. And you really have put your money where your mouth is and have done more than just have a warehouse full of supplies. There is a commitment that the Stitt Group has made to partner with schools to educate the next generation on sustainable building. I'd love for you just to kind of expand upon that and build, because I'm building something here with regard to what you guys are doing, not just in our marketplace here in Northwest Arkansas, but what I think a lot of companies should be doing to play the long game when it comes to, especially when it comes to educating people about a fundamental change in thinking when it comes to the building products that you utilize, the types of buildings that you purchase, and why it's important. So you going into maybe an elementary school right now, while they can't be your customer today, they could be tomorrow for whoever the next generation of Stitts are that are running the company. But can you talk just a little bit about that and why you have focused on that long-term effect?
I'm married to a beautiful lady that's a school teacher in Rogers. And so she teaches gifted and talented students. And so they have what they call a structures fair. And I'm recruited often to come to that event. And we use some of the building products and we talk about solar energy and we build things and we talk about why it's important. One of the products we use is similar to a Lego block.
Okay.
And so students can associate with that well. But it's amazing to me. The last one we had, the students had to present. We gave them a problem, and they had to present based on some criteria about solar and a building, a solution. And my wife and I sat there and listened to these students. Most of them were, I think, 4th or 5th graders, stand up in front of the group that we had several sessions through the day, and they would present their problem. And I often would sit there and think the students their imaginations haven't been
jaded,
right word. There you go. Thank you. Jaded by, you can't do that. The creativity is unbelievable. And there are real solutions that come out of those. So it's inspiring to me. It's motivating to me, but we do it because we do believe that it's not just about us and our generation. It's the next generation and beyond.
Yeah.
Because we need clean energy, not only economically. I do believe it will be a huge economic boost for our region, but also for the country. But it's also the right thing for the future generations.
Yeah. No, I agree with you long term. And it's a conversation that I've had with a lot of design professionals like engineers and architects in terms of extending the awareness of why the design industry is so important when you think of architects, engineers, and construction. And that's why I keep telling them, hey, get into the schools early and start planting those seeds. And you're doing that when it comes to sustainable building design and energy efficient buildings and why that's important. And so I think people need to be thinking about that. And especially not everybody, and I'm sure maybe some of your competitors don't spend that amount of time at the elementary level trying to bring along the next generation of potential consumers, both of energy as well as of the services that you offer. So
it's a real quick story. I was on a job site not too long ago, and one of the gentlemen there I think he was running a pump truck. He came up to me, he goes, I came to your office in 5th grade. And he was probably in his mid to late 20s.
Wow.
And he goes, I got into this industry because of the time I spent learning about energy and sustainable building practices. So I thought, sometimes those things do come back to you.
They really do. I'm trying to get my kids to get involved in the design industry space because I think there's a long runway. There's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of potential disruption to occur in the near future, right? So like maybe one day as you guys are continuing to develop this whole concept or idea of net zero homes, that you come up with some type of solution that literally allows people from the start of building their home, whether it's a tiny home or a 4,000 square foot monstrosity, that they can be off the grid and still live a comfortable life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the messages that we try to convey is we do open houses and home shows and construction open houses, and it's here now. Sometimes we think it's science fiction, but today people can live in a home with all the modern conveniences and have a zero utility bill. And when I say zero utility, that means that they're paying the basic fee required to be connected to the utility, but their energy consumption is zero, or they're powering their house plus 2 vehicles. That's very common, and it is economical. And I think that one of the reasons that is we often think about what does it cost? What is ownership? It's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Right.
Traditionally, when you layer energy on top of that in an environment where the cost of energy is going up, then all of a sudden, if you can remove the E from PITI, meaning there's energies paid for through solar and a battery with incentives and other savings, the economics are incredibly favorable. But it takes a sales team and messaging that is in the spirit of teaching. And great salespeople are great teachers. And so if we can teach the customers, they make the right decision.
Yeah. And speaking of that, just to kind of piggyback on that, what are the most common that you encounter misconceptions about energy efficient homes that you have to kind of walk people through? And I can only imagine you holding a homeowner's hand through this process of all of the inaccurate information that they may have. And then how do you go about trying to give them the information that they need to have?
That's a great question. If you walked into our office, the first thing you'd see in our lobby is about 8 photographs of homes, and not one of them is similar. They are from a very modern contemporary house to a Victorian farmhouse to a subdivision type house. And we do that specifically to share with people that energy efficiency doesn't have to have a particular look, that there are basic principles that we incorporate into every house. And not every person that walks in our door has the perfect building site. Their design or their view or what they want isn't always just perfect. But we have another interesting saying, houses have 4 sides, therefore they face 4 directions. So we can accomplish passive solar on just about any house, maybe to lesser or greater degrees. But our sales team also, we have 2 designers on staff, and they do a wonderful job about listening to the customer, asking them what's important to them. What's the style? What do you want to accomplish in this home? And the principles of building an energy efficient home, adding solar, adding batteries, it can apply to any style home. It can look like the way any customer wants it to look.
Even an office it can apply to. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, which is really helpful. You only mention that because I have a client that I've worked with and done some podcasting for, and they actually have a solar array built on top of, they basically built these outdoor parking structures that they're in New England, mind you, but because of where they're facing, they have a perfect view of the sun and all this other good stuff. But they basically built these like outdoor, like just covered parking. So it's not like a full building or anything. It's just covered parking. But above that covered parking is the solar array. And that basically allows that whole design firm of, I want to say there are about 150 people in that office, to be totally off the grid. And I think I had mentioned to you, the owner of that firm was the person, and I just happen to know this, he built the first net zero energy efficient home in New England. And I don't know, I won't say it's in all the United States. It was in New England, and it was a big deal because, magazines came in and took pictures of his place. But I mean, it was a big deal. And so he not only took that from his experience at his home, but he also brought it to the office. So, I mean, people listening to this, when you think about energy efficiency, it does extend beyond the home. I mean, the offices, especially as we see so many cranes dotting the skylines of Northwest Arkansas that there is an opportunity right now in this moment to make proper plans to be as energy efficient as possible. What are those conversations like that you're having with people, especially that are building here in Northwest Arkansas? And how are you encouraging them to think about this, from that perspective? Because of course, in their minds, every developer is like, I'm trying to keep this thing as low cost as possible, but low cost doesn't always mean a great outcome.
We very openly, we certainly didn't corner the market on energy efficiency and solar. We do have a unique perspective, having 4 decades or more in the industry, and we certainly partner with a lot of builders and developers to help take this to their projects. Because, there's a saying, as the tides rise, all the ships rise.
Yeah.
And so helping and in leveraging our experience and knowledge, not only with customers, but other industry partners is really, really important to us. And so we do quite a bit of that. The big takeaway is that it's not a trade-off. I think there have been times where energy, you go way back into the Carter days where, put on a sweater and lower the thermostat. People want what they want. They want it their way. They want it to be economical, but they want it to be better. And so energy efficiency there's actually an inverse relationship between utility bills and comfort. If you have a high utility bill, you have low comfort. If you have a very low utility bill, you have high comfort. And so being able to show people that you can actually have higher comfort, a lower utility bill, there's a self-esteem piece also to say that I'm existing and thriving with less impact on the climate, on the environment, but also on climate. And that's super interesting and rewarding. And even my wife and I have been married for 30 years this month, actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I remember when we moved into our first house that we built together, and through 4 seasons of sunrises and sunsets. And she recognized, having lived it, that in the summertime, the sun never hits inside our house because of the way it was built. Yet in the wintertime, the sun fills the house with sunshine. And so it's a better, more comfortable life all 4 seasons. So not that everyone has to experience that, but there is a comfort and energy, and there's also a self-esteem piece to it. And it's a better life. And I think that's where the market takes over and it becomes a mass market, is when people say it's better and it's affordable.
So, and I mean, I know some people listening to this are like, yeah, this is great. David's talking about some amazing things that can be done, but a lot of the homes that I see on his site are high-end homes. The affordability factor's not there. Yet and still, you guys do a lot of work with Habitat for Humanity. Your work extends beyond the 1% of homes out there that most of us can't attain to anyway, but you're reaching out and figuring out ways to meet the needs of the mainline home buyer that might be buying an affordable home, if you will.
Yes. And I think that's one of the benefits of the cost of solar coming down. And we do really have 2 divisions to our company where we're doing designing and doing a construction management function on custom homes. But we also have another division where we install solar and batteries on homes and businesses. And where those 2 come together is certainly interesting because everyone has their own budget and their own needs, and energy efficiency is attainable. Energy efficient and solar is attainable for just about anyone that wants it today. It is definitely it's a strong trend and more attainable to the masses than it ever has been.
Yeah. I mean, I think I tell people all the time that there's coming a day and a time when, you're going to be excited to talk about a building that's quote unquote off the grid. I remember, again, working with some other design professionals that had built the first elementary school that was basically net zero. And that's a big deal, right? Because when you think of how in public education, how school buildings consume energy, especially in the wintertime, especially in the summertime, or in the warmer months. So, I mean, the applications are endless and the difference that it can make. I'd love for you just to I'm just curious, how did your dad get into this space? How did he decide that this was the hill that he was going to die on? And I don't mean die, but this is where he was going to make a difference in the world. Because in 46 years, he's been able to do that with the Stitt Group. Both he and your mother, Mary. How did he determine to come to this place?
As we talked in our previous call, I'll take a very, very long story and boil it down. In his early career worked in the chemical industry where they were helping companies recycle wastewater. And it was at a time where it was common practice just to pollute and to dump. And that was, in their eyes, wrong. And going even back a little further into college, with the aspirations of being a chemical engineer, there was a realization that there was an incredible fascination he had with life and ecology and sunrise and sunset and what is the balance of life and nature. And, moving to Rogers in 1978, we built a demonstration home right on Highway 71, which was the main thoroughfare between, Canada and New Orleans. And it was interesting. And I remember those conversations as a kid that if we just build this house that even in 1978 used a fraction of the amount of energy. In fact, for the first 30 some years, there was no utility company heat in the building. We didn't need it because it heated by the sun. And we had a little wood stove in there that would keep it warm. So there was the heating was only from a wood stove. It worked. But there was a time where Americans wanted SUVs and bigger cars, and conspicuous consumption was very common, and energy efficiency wasn't exciting. It wasn't the thing of the day. And frankly, to be fair about it, solar energy was unattainable to the masses. But I think my mother and father's curiosity with how to make a better mousetrap and to live in harmony with the earth and yet still thrive. I mean, sometimes we think in life it's a win-lose. If you want to do this is good, that's a win, this is a lose. But that was not the case. How do we have a win-win, better life, better quality of life, better housing, less impact on the environment? And so here we are today. And he's since started a nonprofit to continue that legacy forward called Holistically Green Living. And so it's saying it's not a sacrifice, it's a better life.
Can you just give us just a little bit on Holistically Green Living?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit that's there to promote what does it look like to live in a more efficient home, driving an EV, even how you eat, how you live your daily life. It shouldn't be pain and sacrifice. It's a better quality of life. And so he uses that as a platform to talk to students and engage at the public library here in Fayetteville, does talks at college campuses. And that's really been his passion, is to perpetuate that and educate people about what's happening in the world today with energy and climate and all those topics.
And this might be, and this is more of a personal question. When did it click for you? At some point, when did you stop becoming, well, I'm just the son and I'm here, as opposed to being like, no, mom and dad, I'm picking up this and running with it? When did it really click for you?
It may sound like an odd answer. Probably when I was, first, second, third grade.
Really?
My father and I installed the first solar system on a house that we were building at the time in about 1975. Okay. And I didn't necessarily know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was involved in it and I understood what was happening. And we lived in the country, and I spent my time in nature, in the woods, playing in the lake. We had, ducks, and we had all these wild critters around. And so I was always fascinated with the outdoors. And when we moved to Rogers, we lived on the lake. And I had all my buddies would be playing video games and stuff, and I'd be at the lake. I would be down there playing. And so I always had this connection and interest. And I think, and then building my own home, the first one, it sort of closed the loop on things, and it really became something that's passionate to me.
So you drank the Kool-Aid early, as they say.
Very much.
Very much.
Yes.
I love that. All right. So how do you see partnerships evolving with the demand for energy efficient homes? And how have you at the Stitt Group have developed partnerships to maybe educate different sectors of the building community to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what needs to be done? Because you know what needs to be done, but sometimes it's getting other people to the table so that we're all reading from the same book, if you will.
Understanding how builders work and what their challenges are, I think, is the first step in that. And having been a general contractor previously, we are currently a licensed general contractor, but we choose not to build our own homes. We like to partner with builders. So we have a process where we design, work with the customer to get their plans and their budget put together. But we actually bring a builder partner into the mix for multiple reasons. Number one, I like to say that we often do things that either builders don't want to do or they're maybe not, that's not their gift. And so that may be floor planning, that may be budgeting, that may be pre-planning. And we rely on builders because they have gifts that we don't possess. And the way the builder has evolved over the years, the builder used to show up on the job site and he started digging the footings and he put the carpet in or the flooring and painted the walls and he was done. It was very much start to finish. But with the demands on a custom home builder today, they have to do all kinds of things and it's hard to keep up. So if we know the energy piece and we know the battery and the electrical and the passive solar and the air sealing and the insulation, everything that's energy, we feel like it's just a marriage made in heaven, that we can come together and partner with great builders and help them achieve their goal, help the customer achieve their goal, and build a home that's state of the art from an energy standpoint. And great partnerships are win-win for both sides. Yeah. And that's really what we're trying to build. And that may be an electrical contractor for a solar project. That may be a developer building 100 homes in a neighborhood. That may be a one-at-a-time custom home builder. It may be a homeowner that says, I'm going to general contract my own home. But we have the knowledge, and it's not ours to hold, to possess and keep. It's for us to share. And we feel like can be the benefit to Northwest Arkansas and the whole country and the world, for that matter, that we've learned this stuff. We'd like to share it.
Well, and that brings up another good point, because you mentioned Northwest Arkansas. I would ask simply, how has your approach to home building impacted things here in Northwest Arkansas? Are you seeing any changes? Because this area is growing. I mean, there are, at the time of recording this, about 36 net new people a day moving here. So it's, that you experienced it. I've been here 10 years and I can see the difference. I know you can see the difference. How has that impacted your approach to building, in terms of what you're seeing right now today?
I think there's certainly a lot more awareness. I think people that are moving here are coming from Austin, Texas, and Southern California, and Oregon, and areas of the country who, by the cost of utilities or the cost of construction or just general education and awareness, are coming here they're asking realtors for it. They're saying, I want this. They're approaching us saying, hey, I'm moving here and I want what I had there, whatever that means. So there's certainly and you almost can't turn the TV on or your smartphone without getting some feed about the cost of energy or climate change or what's happening around the world, which creates more, teachable moments. And people are just more aware, I think.
Yeah, no, they are. They definitely are. With that said, what would you say has surprised you the most about the changes in energy consumption?
It's actually fascinating to me, and it's a big, big challenge. And I think everyone listening can relate to this. Historically, when someone plugs something into the wall, and it's true today, they plug it in the wall, it works. But people that are paying a utility bill or having a solar system added to their home or business or adding a battery are all of a sudden being thrust into this whole new paradigm of how to read their utility bill. What's a watt of energy, a kilowatt hour? What am I really buying? What are fixed charges on my utility bill? What are volumetric charges? And so people are being almost forced, because when you add a solar system or battery, you get this app on your phone that tells you so much information, tells you what you're producing, what you're consuming. It'll even translate that to dollars. And so people are forced to all of a sudden say, wow, I have to learn something that I just used to pay my utility bill. Now I have a stake in the equation. And that has been a challenge. And even though people say, I understand it, the more they live with it, the more intimately they understand it. And then they start to change behavior. But until you really understand what you're dealing with, it's hard to change behavior. And it's fascinating. And the technology is getting better where people can actually look and say, wow, if I run that today, it's costing me $1 an hour. And they can make a choice to turn it off. But up until now, people have not had to do that. There's been no reason. So it's a conscious shift to learning how we consume energy.
I'm always sitting there, and my middle son, Nathan, he always leaves his closet light on. And the boys always leave their bathroom light on. And I'm always wondering in the back of my head, I'm like, those are LED lights. I'm sure I'm not using up a lot, but it's like, I know it's costing me something. And just the simple fact of being able to really account for that and see it in real numbers, I think makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. We're still working on this, but our vision statement that we have is shifting the paradigm for how we consume energy where we live, work, and play. And we change that because historically, and I say we've changed it, we've kind of developed that in our company. But when we think about shifting the paradigm, and it's how we consume energy, home, work, business, school, the reason that's important is historically we said, well, I'm just going to jump in the car and we're going to run to the grocery store. But in the future, you're probably going to say, I'm going to jump on my electric bike and I'm going to run to the grocery store. And the electric bike was charged from the solar panels or the battery on the house. Or maybe it's the EV, or maybe it's autonomous vehicles. And it's not all going to come from the coal plant in western part of Northwest Arkansas. It's going to come from a microgrid, a small solar array down the street. It's going to be, there's an unbelievable amount of transition that will be beneficial, but it's shifting the paradigm for how things have always done. And to your point, once people can start to wrap their head around it, positive change can happen. And it's going to be a huge economic development for the whole nation, for the whole world.
Yeah. Do you have a story or one or two stories that you could share about a client that, maybe they were on the fence about you guys helping them, and then once you did, they were like, what was I waiting for all this time to do this? This was a godsend. I'm sure you have stories like that, but do you have one that you could think of that really stands out where it's like, man, the difference between before and after was so jarring for that client?
Yeah, if this wasn't on the video, you'd see the smile I have from ear to ear. I have so many, I don't know that I can pinpoint one, but I will tell you, I received a message from one of our customers the other day, and she says, we love this app. We watch it more than Twitter. People do become fascinated with the ability to continue learning. So it is transformational.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, I think, and I'd be curious to see this app myself, but I certainly, want to encourage people to be thinking about this because, like I said, as Northwest Arkansas grows, I'm doing work with Urban Land Institute. And when we're thinking about growing this area, we're going to have to go up some. There's plenty of infill to add in. But as we add in these buildings, as we grow, I mean, even right around the corner, there's brand new buildings that are happening right on the foot of the University of Arkansas campus. And if we build these sustainably, meaning that we take all of what has just been talked about in this podcast into consideration, it will serve our generation, it will serve the next generation, it will serve the generation after that. And I think to me, that is the biggest connection that needs to be made, both on the consumer side as well as on the producer side, when it comes to how we get everybody to the table with an understanding that this is good for everyone. This is not about enlarging the Stitt Group. The Stitt Group will certainly benefit from this, but they were along for this ride a long time ago. So this is not their first rodeo when it comes to educating the consumer, educating the builder to make sure that they are offering the best possible products for a healthy and sustainable future when it comes to housing.
And to piggyback on that, when we think about energy as it is generally today, we are mostly mining coal thousands of miles away. We're shipping it halfway across the country to burn it. We're losing a lot of energy in that process. And it makes energy a local industry now. Is if you can put solar and battery systems on your business, your home, you're not only generating the energy locally, you're consuming it within literally feet of where it was produced. And that local, whether it be us or one of our competition who's installing that solar on that business or that home, that is local jobs, local economy, local energy production. And so it takes, and it's not a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's a jobs thing and it's a prosperity thing. And so we don't necessarily think of Northwest Arkansas being an energy hub, but it can be.
Yeah.
Because every home or business that has a battery and a solar array becomes part of future electric generation that allows the economy in this region to grow.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win across the board.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. So I'm sure that somebody listening to this might say, hey, I mean, I'm here for everything that David has shared. How can more homeowners take advantage of your affordable, energy efficient homes?
Yeah, so we have a process that we go through. The first step is to go to our website. You can go to thestittgroup.com or stittsolar.com, and we have a great team of people that work with our customers to see their building site, understand what their goals and objectives are. And we work through the process with them, and we make sure that they gain a wealth of knowledge about what building costs, the benefits, how it works, and again, they can move forward to build that house. Same is true with the solar and battery systems.
Okay. And can you piggyback on that thought with can you maybe just explain real quickly, because I know it's on your website, share more about the Stitt Zero Plus initiative and how that benefits homeowners?
Yeah. So that started, originally so if we go back many years, we had what we call our energy efficient home, which was a very tight energy envelope, well insulated, well air sealed. And then as we started to add solar, people would say, well, I'll worry about that at the end of the job. Well, if anyone who's built a house, by the end of the job, you go, I'm just hoping to get moved in and get the landscaping done. I don't have money for solar. And then Stitt Zero Plus was, well, let's do a battery, even a car charger. So what we're trying to do is get that topic of conversation early in the process. Because if you put a solar array or a battery in your budget and you execute your budget as you should, it will get included in the final home that's finished and you get the benefit. Because then it's included in the construction financing. And if you want to run an ROI on it, if you can include and essentially prepay for your energy for the next 30 years as part of your construction financing or ultimately your home mortgage, the economics are even better. So to include it on the front side, we had to come up with a way. Stitt Zero and Stitt Zero Plus was a way of front loading that conversation to say, we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about it at the beginning, not at the end when it's too late.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, and I think more people should be, kind of become aware of that. We'll put a link on there to the Stitt Zero Plus initiative. What are you seeing, or what have you heard anecdotally from former clients about the resale value of their homes once they've kind of undertaken this?
It's another great question. It's a hard one because these people generally build them and don't sell them.
Yeah.
So there's not a great base of homes that have sold that I can go to a banker and appraiser and say, hey, here's 200 over here. The thing I will say is that through an initiative that started here in Fayetteville, it was called the greening of the MLS. Mm-hmm. And so the realtors can now search on their MLS for homes that have solar that meet a certain score, which is called a home energy rating system. So a certain HERS score. The city of Fayetteville is very active in administering that program. But now an appraiser or a banker can go in and say, hey, here's homes that are listed through the MLS that are for sale now. Or then there becomes a database of projects or homes that were listed and have sold. So the greening of the MLS is a step in that direction to have a database of the value proposition.
Yeah, I love that. And I would imagine that there are some real estate professionals that reach out to you guys for help and advice.
The thing we do get is when a house that we've done sells, it usually is listed as a home that was designed and built with us or our builder partner. And so we often get involved in, what's unique about this home? How does it quote unquote work? And it's kind of nice to say, well, there's not really any magic to it. It just is well built and well insulated and well air sealed. So we do talk to it's a good opportunity to engage with real estate market.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, it sounds like you guys have your work cut out for you. What are you most excited about in the next 3 to 5 years?
Love that question. The technology is going very fast. I was at a conference last week, and we talked a lot about policy through the state and also the Public Service Commission and the need to get policy to keep up with technology. And right now, at the conference, we kind of talked that policy is about a decade behind the technology. But if those two can catch up, then there will be, again, greater opportunity for people to leverage solar and batteries in their personal home and business lives. And so I'm excited about really What I actually see is I've, in my own way, thought about this as the next industrial revolution, that the first industrial revolution was a time of incredible growth and opportunity and prosperity. But in America right now, there's going to be the deployment of lots of clean energy technologies. And that may be wind, that may be solar. There will undeniably be other sources of energy that are going to be needed to bridge the gap from where we are to a completely 100% clean economy. And that's not saying, I'm going to say generally away from hydrocarbons. So it's not all going to be solar. It's not all going to be batteries, but we have to have a cleaner economy, cleaner energy economy. And that's exciting to me because for 45 years, just wrapped up our fiscal year. So we're starting the 46th here. We've never had that before. We've never had a conversation with the legislature and the market that said this is a mass market and it's economic, and the people that know how to do it and do it well will find a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. First of all, I think this isn't a space in the industry to be involved in. I think there's a tremendous upside. I'm actually surprised that you actually have a very small group of people for the amount of work that you do. And that speaks volumes to the fact that, small footprint, big impact, right? And it's the same idea with regard to the electric grid and what you're hoping to do with the solar and all the energy efficient products that you guys are offering. So, no, I'm excited that you've had a chance to share all of this. Is there any final thought that you'd like to leave with our audience, especially somebody that has been on the fence about solar in the past, but maybe after listening to this conversation is like, you know what, I need to give this David and this Stitt Group a shot and see what they're all about.
We have again, one of our sayings, knowledge is power, no pun intended.
No, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah, that is one of our core values, is to educate and teach, treat others the way we want to be treated. And if people want to challenge us and question it, that's good. We can give them the facts. We can show people the pros, the cons. Maybe someone doesn't like the way solar looks. Maybe they don't want some style of house. So I think it's a great conversation, and iron sharpens iron. And when we engage with people that are willing to challenge us, we all get smarter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a ton of misconceptions out there that sometimes just need a little bit more conversation around them so you have a better understanding. Yeah. If anybody listening to this wants to connect with you, reach out with you and or the Stitt Group, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can reach out on our website, thestittgroup.com.
Okay.
We also have stittsolar.com. Those are our two websites, and you can get to either site at stittsolar.com or thestittgroup.com, or you can call our office in Rogers.
Give us the number.
479-636-8745.
That's perfect. Yeah, and we'll put everything in the show notes so that everybody listening to this has some type of information in reference to what David's been talking about. We'll make sure you have access to the transcript, all the good information about the Stitt Group, about energy efficient home building and what that looks like, especially here in Northwest Arkansas. As we know, you might be listening to this, you're thinking about relocating your family here. Maybe you're already here. This is an opportunity for you to take that next step and make a difference, not just for your own pocketbook, but for the health of our earth, if you will. And so it's a bigger call than just normal, but certainly aided by the information and the background and experience of the Stitt Group, which is 46 plus years of time in this space. I think you will do really well to decide what are the next steps for you and your family if you're deciding to build energy efficient in the future. Does that sound fair?
Sounds great.
Good. Okay. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Who said you can't learn something on this podcast? We had a whole session today on energy efficiency, on solar living, and on all of the opportunities that are available to both you and I here in Northwest Arkansas and beyond when it comes to building an energy efficient home. I really appreciate the folks at the Stitt Group. This was a special episode that we wanted to do with them to highlight their background, their experience, and the work that they're doing in making a difference right here in our own backyard in the great old Northwest Arkansas. So I appreciate you guys listening to this. Remember, Our episode comes out every Monday, rain or shine. You can catch us on every major podcasting platform, especially Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Tune into this, and as well, you can also hear an excerpt from our episodes on KUAF's Ozarks at Large as well. So I hope you tune in and check us out. I'm Randy Wilburn, the host of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast, and we'll see you back here next week. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit iamnorthwestarkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.